I think one of the most disturbing things to me about this MAGA movement is all of the different people who have thrown away their values and their principles. Also, they can just bend the knee to Donald Trump. You've got people in his cabinet, you've got elected Republicans in Congress, and many of these people have just removed their backbone and become completely subservient to dear leader. They're either scared of Donald Trump himself or that Elon Musk will fund a primary against them. And at least some of these people used to be rational. I mean, JD Vance himself used to refer to Donald Trump as America's Hitler. He equated him to an opiate, which is a pretty wild thing to say once you start to think about it. But ever since JD Vance has been on track to get in the good graces of the MAGA movement, he's pretty much done a complete 180 in his entire worldview. And now you even have members of his own family who are coming out and saying that this is not the JD Vance that we knew. And especially after he went on the attack against Zelensky in the Oval Office, JD Vance's cousin, Nate Vance, he's coming out and criticizing what was done that day. Because anybody who watched on as JD Vance and Donald Trump went on the attack against Zelensky, we saw that they just look like a bunch of bullies and a complete capitulation to Russia. And for somebody like Nate Vance, this is very deadly serious. He volunteered to go over to Ukraine and fought on the front lines. If you guys do appreciate my work, please do remember to subscribe.
Nate Vance is a Texas native. He fought on the front lines in Ukraine for nearly 3 years as part of the elite Da Vinci Wolves Battalion, seeing some of the war's bloodiest, most horrific battles all the way from 2022 until just this January. This video shows him in a trench as Russian artillery rounds were raining down on him and his battalion. These images show the two cousins back in the day vacationing together. Through the years, Nate and JD share grandparents. JD's mother and Nate's father are siblings.
So that's some dedication. Somebody who's standing up for democracy on the other side of the world. I think he went over there to start training Ukrainian soldiers, and then he joined the fight. So this is deadly serious for somebody like Nate Vance. And to see his cousin just pretty much capitulate to Russia and spew Russian talking points in the Oval Office, I'm sure was just a sight to behold. If that was my cousin, somebody that I grew up with, I don't know what I would do. But he's saying here that, viewing Russia through an American lens is very, very foolish.
So, Nate, I know you call yourself a Republican-leaning independent. I know you've been supportive at times of the Trump administration. But on this issue of Ukraine, where you have put so much of your life over these past few years, you think your cousin is misguided. How come?
Excuse me. Well, I think my experience in Ukraine has given me a unique perspective that most Americans don't have. There are certainly cultural differences both between the Ukrainians and Americans and the Russians. And I think if you try to deal with Russia through an American lens, it will come back to bite you. They don't necessarily think like we think. And I'm talking about their political class. I've personally witnessed them shooting their own troops on enough occasions that it wasn't just an isolated incident. It's happened quite a bit, enough to the point where you could consider it to be policy if troops are retreating. So these people, as a policy, will eat their own. So they will not hesitate to eat an American president or American vice president. They don't care what we think. They're not our allies, and they never will be, not at least for a generation.
That's a pretty insane thing. He's saying that the Russian government, Putin, will throw his guys into the wood chipper as a matter of policy. And then you have JD Vance coming in and saying, well, we just need peace, and you need to be diplomatic, and we need to work with the Russians. I mean, it is so shallow, so ignorant. Like, Russia has been the aggressor for the past at least decade. I mean, they invaded Crimea in 2014. They've broken a whole bunch of ceasefire deals. We know that Vladimir Putin is trying to reestablish the Soviet Empire. And then you've got idiots like JD Vance coming along and saying, well, we just need to be diplomatic. And it's actually Zelensky, he's the one who's the dictator because he's not holding elections. Even though his constitutional duty is to not hold elections during wartime. So viewing this peace process through an American lens without considering how the Russians operate, it seems like a mistake. I'm pretty sure that's what he is saying here. And also conceding to Russia would be a huge mistake. And that is exactly what the Trump administration is proposing we do. He's pretty much telling Ukraine to surrender because Donald Trump wants to look like the big, bad, tough guy bringing peace between Ukraine and Russia.
I mean, what do you want to say to him now in this moment?
Well, look, I mean, there's more than one reason why you could make the argument for supporting Ukraine. There's the, kind of emotional argument, the human element argument part of it, which fine, if that's the argument you want to make in order to support Ukraine, then I support that. There's also the element of how it will affect the United States long term, right? So if you're just more transactional in nature and you are concerned, what is the benefit for the United States? I don't think there's any scenario where like if this war pauses and sanctions are lifted, Russia has spent the last 3 years kind of beefing up their military-industrial complex, and if you lift those sanctions, you're going to see a massive influx of funds into that military-industrial complex, and they're going to build a war machine out of it, right? That's what they're going to do. And the concept of an imperialistic, aggressive, modernized military Russia who has learned their lessons about modern combat is problematic for our future. And if the Russians are given significant concessions in this ceasefire, they will spin that as a victory of sorts. But their view is they're not done. So to them, it's just a chance to regroup, build up and modernize, and they'll come back. And when they do come back, they'll be more of a problem than they are now. Right now, they're at the weakest they will ever be. As soon as the ceasefire starts, they will immediately start to get stronger and continue to get stronger every day thereafter. So the way this ends is important.
Yeah, the way this ends is very, very important. That's why we talk about a just and durable peace, where we aren't conceding everything that Russia wants or their demands to them, right? We have to think about this thoughtfully. And as he pointed out here, if we can just, aid Ukraine so they can continue their fight for their own sovereignty, well, we can grind Russia into dust. If we let up now and we let a ceasefire to take place, as we have been warning, they are just going to be able to catch their breath. They're going to be able to regroup. They're going to strengthen. And then they're going to reinvade when the time is right, because this is what Russia has done over and over and over again. But it doesn't seem like this Trump administration has thought through any of that. They think that Trump making some sort of deal on paper, writing it down, is all they need, and that Donald Trump's word is gold, and that Russia would never go against Donald Trump's deal. I mean, that is the position that they have taken. Doesn't seem like they've considered any of this other stuff. And we know that a strengthened Russia, an aggressive Russia, would seek to expand its territory even further. That is why it is the worst decision that we just give them all the land they've taken. We just give them everything they want in a Ukrainian peace deal. I mean, it is absolutely absurd. This is something that up until now, over the past 80 years, we understood this. But this Trump administration seems to have no understanding at all. And instead, they're just kind of getting in bed with Putin because Donald Trump wants his ego stroked for bringing peace to the region. But that peace doesn't mean anything if it is not a just and durable peace. That's why those security guarantees are so important for Ukraine. So Russia doesn't have the chance to start expanding its borders when the time is right. And to have an administration not consider all of this information seems to be just wild. And Nate Vance is saying that at least JD Vance would want all the information before coming to some of these decisions, but that doesn't seem to be the approach that he has taken.
You did share some photos of the two of you growing up at his grandmother's house. He's in the Superman shirt there on the tractor. Then JD spent time with your family in California. And, so these are all the times you spent together. And what was he like then? And how do you feel now that, I guess, I don't know how to put it, he's not returning your call on this issue that you know so much about?
Well, I can't, in all fairness to JD, say that he received that message and then ignored it. I can't do that because I don't know that he got it. But I did reach out. But regardless of whether or not I reached out or not, I mean, he definitely knew I was there and at no point tried to make contact, and there were ways to do that. So when, if a wise person, if they're going to make a decision, tries to find every available piece of information to kind of come to a conclusion about something, and this is such a dramatic issue, or such a serious issue that, why not seek out every piece of information? He certainly doesn't have to take my advice, but I do find it a little strange that he never sought the advice in the first place.
Yeah, I find that pretty strange. If I had a family member that went over to Ukraine to fight on the front lines, you best be damn sure I would be calling to check in with them about the whole situation, get their perspective on what is actually going on, get their perspective on what Russia might do, get their perspective on how Ukraine could, fight through this or whatever it might be. But to have your own cousin who, they seem to be decently close, spending the summers together, to not even call, that my brain doesn't compute that. That is just wild. Why wouldn't you seek all of the information that you could possibly get before capitulating to Russia in the Oval Office, before you spewed Russian talking points, Russian propaganda in the Oval Office? It just seems quite insane to me that you have a family member who is fighting for the cause of democracy over in Ukraine and you don't even bother to pick up the phone or answer his call. This is what I mean. These people have capitulated. I keep on using that word. They've just bent the knee to Donald Trump. They have become completely subservient to whatever it is that Donald Trump wants. And because he wants his ego stroked and to be viewed as some sort of peacemaker in the region, well, it seems like JD Vance abandons anything that might be contrary to dear leader. I just don't understand how these people have lost all of their backbone. It's hard for me to imagine coming to a place in my life where that would be the case, just doing a complete 180 on everything I used to believe to serve somebody as horrific as Donald Trump. I don't know. What do you guys think? I'll leave it there for now. If you guys got anything out of this video, please do remember to smash that like button and subscribe. Maybe share with a friend or two. I'd very much appreciate that. We've got to build something here on the left that can adequately push back against this right-wing media ecosystem, because they too are spewing Russian propaganda, and they are more in alignment with Russia right now than they are their American neighbors, if they're liberal. So if you do like what I do here, please do remember to subscribe. If you want to see just what an absolute shit show it was in the White House as JD Vance and Trump berated Zelensky, go ahead and watch that video on the screen now. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on the next one.